My name is Kwadwo Gyarteng-Dakwa. I am an anesthesiologist with fellowship training in critical care and pain management. I remember when I was a very young boy, probably I was about 6 or so, around that age. I had asthma, and it was quite severe. And I remember a time when my father had brought me to see the doctor because I had one of those bad attacks. And when we got to the hospital, and this was in Ghana, there were so many people sitting under a shade, and you could tell that they were strained by looking at them, tired, strained, and most probably have been there for a very long time. And I remember till this day that I asked my father, why are all these people here? Then he would tell me, well, they are lined up to see a doctor because they're probably sick or somebody with them would be sick. And they have to wait on a doctor. There may be only 1 or 2 of them who have to see all these people. And probably that's why they are still here. Then I asked him, so what can we do to help these people? Then he answered, well, first, you need to study hard and you need to do quite a lot of training to become a doctor. Then you can come back here and help these people. I remember in those childhood years, I spent some time living with my grandmother, and we lived briefly in the village, and it was very common to see when people passed away and they were bringing their body for funeral and that type of thing. There will be vehicles lined up, people, and as they enter the city, they will typically blow horn very loudly and very prolonged period of time, just to announce that a dead body is coming through town, just to get attention of. So there was one of those times I was with my grandmother, and apparently a physician who is from that town has passed away, and the body is coming through now, and there was this very loud horn. And I was with my grandmother and said, well, this is what I would like you to do, so that one day when I pass away and they bring my body through this town, there will be the sound of this horn. And then I will say, well, this is my grandmother. And then people will say the grandson is also a physician. So I remember these things. She spoke to me there about doctors and all of that. So my recall of what has actually driven me and shaped me into looking at a profession in healthcare was from these 2 early experiences that I had with family members. Anesthesiology appealed to me in particular when I had come to my latter part of my studies in medical school. We have gone through a lot of basic sciences and have rotated through many clinical subspecialties. But typically, you don't get a lot of rotations and exposure to anesthesia until a certain specific period of your training. Now, when I got to that stage, I began to recognize how intriguing the subject matter of anesthesiology is. The science behind it was very intriguing. It sort of put together all the things that you have learned in medical school, the basic sciences, how the body works, the drugs that makes the body work, the changes that you can put in place with the drug to shape the physiology of the body were all being unfolded to you in the study of anesthesia. I found that very intriguing. Then again, I learned later years that it was one of the areas that you could actually go in, provide very good care, and still come back home without necessarily being bugged with continuity of care whilst you're at home. In other words, you can balance that with lifestyle. So that was also very appealing to me about anesthesiology, the lifestyle and the science behind it. I migrated to the United States probably nearly 3 decades ago. And when I first came to the United States, I had just completed medical school and had to work on my medical licensing exam and get myself prepared for a medical profession. And before doing that, before getting into the arena of medicine, I had to work in different capacity to get myself ready, not necessarily medicine related. But I remember I worked as a security officer in New York. I worked in fast food restaurants. I worked some in factories, and those were the beginning of my work life in the United States, and they came with very unique experiences. Then came the years when I went through medical training, and in the course of the training, the type of experience was also very different. It was shaped with what you were doing, the people you had to do that with, the institutions in which you find yourself to do that. And that came with also different kinds of experience, sometimes very fulfilling, sometimes very promising, sometimes very bumpy, and again, all different kinds of experience. So any number of situations has presented different kinds and very diverse experiences. But by and large, they have been good, exciting, and rewarding as well. This is why giving back to others means a lot to me. Well, like I alluded to, I grew up in Ghana, and in Ghana, when I was growing up, you will normally be brought up by a community, not just your individual parents or family members. It's a community that brings you up. So naturally, giving, it's a natural thing that comes with that aspect of your life. You grow up with it. It's not something that you sit and think about and say, today I'm going to give. It is naturally worked into your DNA. And so it continues, be it at the level of individual or at the level of institution. So for me, for instance, I studied with a Ghana government scholarship through elementary school all the way through medical school. Now, if you talk about the Ghana government giving you scholarship, then of course it's really the Ghanaian taxpayer who is paying for my education. So that is a type of giving in a way. So I always had it in mind that I have to return. The community invested into me, and I have to return that investment. We all invest and we want returns of our investment. So I felt, I have always felt that there is a bigger need for me to return. So whenever time I find that opportunity, I do it. Whenever time I can. And I have not stopped looking at the ways and acting on the ways to even further continue giving. This is what I found to be a valuable advice to other physicians. I think first we have to be aware what it takes for somebody to place a little bit of their health in your hands. It's a great responsibility that we shouldn't take lightly. But unfortunately, we get so distracted with so many things and so many details that we have to pay attention to that we often are tempted to take that for granted. And I have, through the years, 30 years of working, and I'm sure at one point in time, every physician, no matter who that is and what they do, may have found themselves taking that also for granted. And I think we should not. We should, as much as we can, always stop and recognize that that is a big responsibility, no matter how brief or short or insignificant that may feel to us. Faith plays a very big role in my life. Through the years, I have just come to realize that there are so many things that I have done. There are so many things that has come and gone in my life. There are so many falls that I have taken, and there are so many times that I have risen, and these are simply not just by my strength, my might, and my personal ability. It's got to be that the God that I believe in, by the grace, gets me through some of these things. Particularly if I look at some of the bumps that were lined up in my travel till this day, and how I got through them and continue to be sitting down here and have this conversation. It just deepens my faith and tells me that there is a higher God who looks over me. So that is that has shaped my faith even more based on the experiences that I have had in the past. My plans for the future is quite a lot. First, hopefully I'll begin to win some things down and find good enough time to spend with family and friends, in some cases who I will not call friends but family, and still find a balance to continue to do some of what I'm still doing. Particularly, I want to be able to care for my patients in as long as I have the strength. God gives me the strength and the energy to do that. There is a school that my parents left behind. We spoke about giving. This school was started by my parents, giving that to the community when they first moved in that community. And that is a place where school children have come to get formal education, regardless of the fact that they would be able to pay for their fees or not. I have supported the school. My parents passed away. The management and the support of the school now falls on myself and my siblings. We are keeping that alive to keep that legacy going. I also working on establishing a clinic in Ghana to again give back some kind of in some kind of way to the community. So these are the things that I'm working on. If God gives me the strength and the health, I would like to see that come to pass. The one experience that I had that have taught me the most is the passing of my grandmother, that is my mother's mother, and my mother. Now, when my grandmother passed away, when she was buried on a Saturday, and my mother had been the main person who had put together a nice funeral for her, had taken weeks and months to prepare for the funeral, and the funeral itself was attended by a fairly large number of people because my grandmother was very old. But 2 days later, my mother also passed away. My grandmother was buried on a Saturday. By midnight on Monday, my mother passed away. And those were very difficult times. And that put together taught me one great lesson. Now, when my mother was seeing all those people at my grandmother's funeral and was interacting with all of us, I didn't realize that in that same breath, she was saying goodbye to everyone. And I don't think she even expected that. And neither of us expected that. But the lesson that I learned from that directly is that what we have, and it's been said many times, is this very moment, this minute. The very next minute is not promised to us. And so whatever we have to do, I think we should be mindful of that and do it as if this was the very last moment of our time. And I think I still continue to try to understand the dynamics, the connections of all of this. But in and of itself, this has left a very strong impression in my mind that we should look at every single moment that we have in the present time as probably the most valuable and probably possibly the very last moment that we could have. I think it's not unreasonable, given the experience that I have, to sometimes look at times and situations like that.